So our next speaker is Sam Taggart, and he will talk about simple delegated choice.
Thanks for the introduction. This is joint work with Ali Khodabakhsh and Emmanouil Pountourakis. So this work is about a variant of the delegation problem. Oh, going to full screen it.
Yep.
So we've got a principal who has to make some decision. We've got an agent who knows something about the state of the world. The touchstone example you should have in your mind is the following. Think about a firm that needs to buy some fancy piece of equipment. That equipment is going to be used by a specialist. So in the story, think about the firm as being the principal. Think about the specialist as being the agent. So the action is the purchase choice. The firm gets to make the final decision. But it's the specialist who knows what brands of this particular equipment are good or bad. OK, so in this story and in our model in general, preferences are state dependent. So what brands are good and bad determines which piece of equipment you should buy. And the preferences are sort of aligned, but not completely. So both the firm and the specialist want to purchase a good piece of equipment, but it's the firm that's footing the bill. So you could imagine pretty complicated mechanisms for such a setting. But if your mechanism is deterministic, as without loss of generality, to delegate the decision to the agent. So the principal picks a subset of actions and allows the agent to pick their favorite. What we ask in our work is, when are simple mechanisms for this setting approximately optimal? So our model is kind of embarrassingly simple. So it's a discrete choice setting. We have n actions the principal can take. And each action gives the principal some amount of utility and the agent some amount of utility. In particular, the principal's utility will be, we'll call it their value. And the agent also gets the value, but they also get a bias term, which you can see here, VI is the value, BI is the bias. So we're assuming that these values are unknown and drawn from a distribution. So these are what you should think of as the state. And then we're assuming that the biases are fixed and known to the principal. So this may seem restrictive, and it's because it is, but it captures a lot of really natural scenarios. And in particular, it captures this touchstone example that I just gave you, where the unknown quantity here is the qualities, and the prices are known source of disagreement. OK. So the timing of a delegation mechanism is that the principal presents their subset of actions that they're going to allow. The agent observes the state, which is the values. And they pick the thing that they like best, which is the thing that maximizes value plus bias. OK? To capture the fact that in some scenarios, there is some outside option, some action that the agent could take that the principal can't stop them from taking, we're going to add action 0, which always must be in the delegation set. And this is particularly important for an application I'll talk about later. So the principal's goal is to maximize the value they get in expectation from the action that the agent chooses. OK. One nice thing that this captures is utility-based assortment optimization. So in assortment optimization, you have a seller with a bunch of fixed price items. They need to choose their inventory to offer to a buyer. So if the buyer is unit demand, and if they're making their choices based on a utility model with quasi-linear utility, then this is actually a special case of the model I just showed you. And in this model, the outside option has a nice interpretation. So if the outside option has fixed value of 0 for the principal, this is like the agent going away and buying nothing. And if the outside option has a random value, that allows us to capture the setting where the agent actually doesn't just not buy, but they go and buy elsewhere. And this shouldn't be totally obvious, but it's true. OK. So what are we actually trying to do formally? Well, we're not going to try to approximate first best. So in our setting, it's actually not possible with a deterministic or any mechanism to approximate the expected value of the highest value action. And notably, this sets us apart from the work of Bechtel, Dugmi, and Patel that we saw earlier in this workshop. This is really a different model. So instead, we're going to approximate the second best, the principal's utility from the best deterministic mechanism. So we're going to consider doing so with simple mechanisms. In particular, we'll consider thresholds. So a threshold mechanism just says, you can do anything you want as long as it has bias at most t. Or you can take the outside option. So threshold mechanisms are eminently practical. So in our touchstone example, these are just budgets the firm imposes. In assortment optimization, these are a canonical mechanism form. They're referred to in that literature as revenue-ordered assortments. So what do we prove? Well, we give approximation results under 3 increasingly general regimes. So with independent values and a fixed outside option, we show that the best threshold is a 3 approximation to second best. If you allow the values to be random, then you can't actually get a constant approximation, but you can prove a parameterized approximation, parameterized by the ratio of value, the highest value for any action ever, divided by opt, and you get an approximation rate that grows very slowly. And then we also give a general analysis where values are allowed to be correlated. So all of these analyses are tight, and so we give sort of a tight characterization of simple versus optimal mechanisms in this setting. So I'll leave you with that, but I'd be delighted to chat more offline about how we prove these results or what kind of stuff we want to do next. Thanks.